Have you ever wondered how those mysterious giants, the Nephilim, would have possibly survived the great flood that was to wipe all life off this planet? Many generations of scholars, theologians, and firm believers have wondered how these giants of fallen angels and human offspring made their way back onto Earth after the floodwaters had cleared. Be prepared to be amazed as we examine this ancient mystery and discover how the Nephilim returned after the flood. It is best first to understand who the Nephilim were, and for that matter why their existence was so troubling in the first place, to know how they survived the flood. According to the book of Genesis, the Nephilim were mighty warriors and giants, the offspring of the sons of God, a phrase many have interpreted to mean fallen angels, and earthly women. These beings were believed to be powerful yet corrupt and violent, creating a wide scale of wickedness on earth. Their being and influence were crucial for God's decision to flood the earth. Genesis 6:4 says, "The Nephilim were on the earth in those days, and also afterward, when the sons of God went to the daughters of humans and had children by them." This verse is important because it states that though the Nephilim were there before the flood, it shows that in some manner they continued after the flood. But how could that be if the flood was to have wiped out everyone except for Noah and his family, along with the animals in the ark? Several theories exist concerning how the Nephilim survived the flood. Each one is more provocative than the next. The most commonly accepted version is that one or two giants managed to slip onto Noah's ark or cling to its sides, hoping to run out the storm. But there is a glaring problem with that argument. The Bible is quite clear that every living substance was destroyed, and only Noah, his family, and the animals on the ark were left remaining alive. This makes it highly improbable to have a Nephilim hitchhiker in the ark in the first place. Another alternative theory is that yet another group of fallen angels sinned again after the flood, and they came down to earth in an attempt to create a whole new generation of Nephilim. However, this also becomes a very uncertain argument when ancient Jewish texts state that the fallen angels were given one of the worst punishments for their actions. Texts like the Book of Enoch have them end up in the lake of fire for eternity. This text portrays these angelic creatures, the most potent and high-ranking angels called the Watchers, as being given a harsh judgment that no other angel would think to make the same mistake. Michael is even quoted to have said, "Behold, he has been handed over to you. Deal with him as seems good and pleasing to you," further adding that no angel could bear a judgment so terrible, nor could any angel desire to be sent into the hands of the accusers, even into the hands of those most sinful that constitute the demonic army, the punishment of the former angels who sinned by mixing with human women. So, if the Nephilim did not stow away on the ark, and no other group of falling angels bred a new breed of them, then where did they go? The solution could lie within Noah's very own bloodline. Following the deluge, the Bible tells us that the earth was repopulated by three sons of Noah, Shem, Ham, and Japheth, and the women those sons married. The answer to the survival of the Nephilim may be found through Noah's son Ham. The Bible plainly states that Ham is the father of Canaan, and through his descendants, we find references to giants in the land of Canaan long after the floodwaters had gone down. Could it have been that one of Noah's sons, or more precisely, one of their wives, carried the genetic markers from the Nephilim? If so, this genetic trait could work through generations and remain latent for some time, only to reappear in a more dominant form later. Of course, this is a matter of recessive genetic traits. Much like blue eyes or red hair, gigantism was one of those traits that could be passed along and lay dormant for generations, then pop up when two carriers of that recessive gene have a child. To better understand this, genetics would have to be examined. Dominant features like brown eyes can show up if at least one parent carries them. Recessive features like blue eyes only appear if both parents carry the gene. In the case of the Nephilim, gigantism may have been an unmanifested recessive trait within the genes of Noah's family. Over the generations, as children and grandchildren intermarried, the possibility of two people carrying the recessive gene having offspring increased, and giants once again would have appeared. The return of the Nephilim, or giants, in the land of Canaan can also be studied by observing the descendants of Ham. In the Bible, An incident after the flood is that Noah pronounced a curse upon Canaan the son of Ham, saying, "Cursed be Canaan, the lowest of slaves will he be to his brothers." Genesis 9:25. This incident becomes important because it suggests a possible source of corruption in Ham's lineage. The children of Canaan, among them the Canaanites, are repeatedly spoken of in the Bible in involvement with detestable acts. They are also referred to in connection with the giants. The fact that these Nephilim tribes were in Canaan even after the flood is seen in a text such as Numbers 13:33, when spies for the Israelites were searching out the land of Canaan. "We saw the Nephilim there, the descendants of Anak come from the Nephilim. We seemed like grasshoppers in our own eyes, and we looked the same to them." This passage provides further evidence that the Nephilim continued to exist after the flood and were present in the land of Canaan. The Anakim are also described as giants and are considered to be the offspring of the Nephilim. What is being propagated here is that the Nephilim genetics continued through the descendants of Ham, specifically Canaan. If gigantism was a recessive trait carried by the descendants of Noah, it could explain why giants appeared among the Canaanites long after the flood. This understanding also explains why God instructed the destruction of the inhabitants of Canaan. In Deuteronomy 7:1-2, God instructed the Israelites to utterly destroy the inhabitants of the land: the Hittites, the Amorites, the Canaanites, the Perizzites, the Hivites, and the Jebusites. The intent of this order was probably to wipe out the remnants of the Nephilim gene pool from the earth, not to spread corruption and idolatry among God's people. He did this to raise within the land of their forefathers promise of a holy and faithful nation. That God told the Israelites not to intermarry with these people implies that their genetic lineage was considered dangerous in some respects, perhaps holding the hidden potential of continuing to spawn giants or otherwise corrupted beings. This helps explain the periodic references to giants throughout the Old Testament. For example, Goliath, the giant warrior David famously defeated, was from the city of Gath, associated with the Philistines. The Philistines were descendants of Ham, which again traces back to the cursed lineage of Canaan. Thus, the survival of Nephilim traits can be traced to the descendants of Noah's family through Ham's line, in particular. Another exciting aspect of this genetic theory is the recessive traits. This can explain why some physical characteristics, like gigantism, disappear for generations, only to suddenly appear again. Recessive traits are masked except when both parents carry the recessive gene. Also, in the theory of the Nephilim, the gene for gigantism was probably recessive in the children of Noah's sons. So if these latent gene individuals intermarried, the law of probability demands that the expression chance of that recessive gene increase and thus be born giants like Goliath or the Anakim. This postulation also keeps with our understanding of ancient lineage and marriages. This is because marrying within the tribe or close kin was quite common in the early biblical period. This could concentrate the recessive genes of the Nephilim through generations, thus heightening the possibility of eventual expression. This is further supported by the fact that many ancient cultures, such as among the Israelites, practiced endogamous marriages to preserve tribal and family lines. The survival of the Nephilim and their reincarnation could be interpreted as an outcome of genetic inheritance bestowed upon them by close-knit family marriages. To use a more casual expression, one might look upon the genes of the Nephilim as a buried treasure, locked deep within human genetics. For many generations, this buried treasure might lie beneath the surface, unseen. But when certain conditions fall into place, it just may rise to the surface. If two people with this latent genetic key, as in two carriers of the recessive Nephilim gene, came together, they could unlock this hidden trait and bring giants back into reality. This knowledge of genetics offers a scientific reason for the continuance of the Nephilim, but also bridges biblical accounts to current scientific concepts. Besides this, the Bible provides many accounts of giants in the post-flood world. Besides Goliath and the Anakim, we also hear of the Rephaim, the Emim, and the Zamzummim, different tribes of giants that continued to exist across the diverse precincts of the ancient world. These references all indicate that the Nephilim's legacy was great and extensive, not confined to one geographical region or a single tribe. It points to a world in which the power of the Nephilim spread across generations and places, further suggesting that their survival had something to do with the genetics that Noah's offspring carried. But why did God seem desperate to clean the earth from the Nephilim genes? The reason is their very nature. They were not just giants, but were seen as the essence of rebellion against God's natural order, a union of divine and human that was not supposed to be. The Nephilim were there to subvert the fundamental boundaries that, in God's plan, had been established between the celestial and earthly worlds. God did this to cleanse creation one more time, and to ensure that earth remained a place of humankind, which is what the Lord created it to be. What can be concluded from all these facts about the underlying significance of the Nephilim survival? It tells of the biblical story of spiritual and moral decay, not just of corpulent giants. The continuation of the Nephilim race beyond the flood serves as a constant reminder of this struggle between good and evil, purity and corruption. It raises questions regarding to what extent God would protect his creation from those forces that he deems inimical to undermining it. The survival of the Nephilim is essentially a multi-layered story that weaves together theology, history, and genetics. It calls on us to rise above the scripture's literal meanings and find more in these ancient tales. The Nephilim stands for something more than figures in myth and legend. They represent deeper meanings concerning human nature and sin as a punishment for pride set in rebellion against God's will and an eternal conflict between light and darkness. There you have it, the most plausible explanation of how the Nephilim giants could have survived the great flood lies in the genetic lineage of Noah's descendants, especially through Ham and his son Canaan. With recessive genetic traits and intermarriage, the potential for gigantism remained, enabling the Nephilim to reappear in later generations. This intriguing exploration exposes the complexities of biblical accounts and how these ancient texts can intersect with our modern understanding of genetics. If you found this dive into ancient mysteries as fascinating as we did, remember to like, subscribe, and share this video with others who might be intrigued by these stories. Your support helps us continue to explore and uncover the hidden depths of history and scripture. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.